Darlin', hey, darlin', you got something on your sleeve. Carl snapped at his rapier long enough to shrug his shoulders and smile up to the waitress before driving back to the best damn sloppy Joe he'd ever tasted. It seemed he had lost all his sense of proper dining etiquette after his first bite, but it didn't faze her for a second. She'd seen that glassy-eyed gaze many times before. She tossed a few more napkins on the table and shuffled away to top off the customer's coffee. A little while later, Carl dipped the napkin in his water and dabbed the greasy red splotch on his shirt. He did it more for the sake of appearance than anything else. The shirt was easily written off in his mind as the worthwhile sacrifice for discovering the best damn meal he'd ever had. "Oh, darling, I don't think that's coming out," said the waitress with a motherly tone. He glanced at her name tag. "Can I get one more to go, Nancy?" Nancy smiled. "Sure thing, sugar." The 3-hour drive home was almost unbearable. He kept glancing at the greasy bag in the passenger seat. Carl couldn't possibly eat another bite, but all he really wanted to do was pull over and eat that sloppy Joe. He swiped the escaping saliva off the side of his mouth, then revved up his car up to 15 miles per hour over the limit. Carl didn't even think about unpacking his car. He just grabbed the doggy bag and rushed into this house. Moments later, the paper bag lay in shreds beneath the dining table. He carefully peeled back the foil wrapping, revealing the monster of a sandwich within. The cold, congelated mess before him seemed to taste even better than the fresh one he'd had earlier. Its soggy 6-inch bun didn't desolate him one bit. He devoured it quickly and wished he had another. The long drive between him and the only thing he cared to eat anymore was beginning to weigh on him. He'd make the trip straight from work on Fridays and sit down in his booth to 2 delicious sloppy Joes. 30 Joes would make the long drive home with him. But eventually, that wasn't enough to last him until the weekend. He was putting on so much weight his girlfriend was always lecturing him for his eating habits. "Carl, you've outgrown your clothes 4 times in 3 months. That's not healthy." Carl hated to admit it, but he knew something had to change. His new place was less than a mile from the diner. His new job at the only gas station in town gave him plenty of chances to eat between transactions. He felt bad about how he left things between him and his girlfriend, but the rumors didn't last long. They'd even displayed a framed picture of him in his booth at the diner, which he visited at least 3 times a day. 7 months since the first life-changed Joe, now he could finish 4 of them at a time. 2 for breakfast, 3 or 4 for lunch, 4 for dinner, and of course the occasional one as a snack. Carl didn't really think of much any more than just the next sloppy Joe, and he couldn't have been happier. The world seemed so much easier to traverse now. Everything just fell into place once he had slaughtered off all the toppings of the old life and focused what was really important to him. "Hey Nancy, what can I do for you, hun?" "Well, I've been wondering. You guys are out in the middle of nowhere, but you stay so busy. How do you do it?" "Nothing to it, sugar. It's just all because of our loyal customers. Years and years of regulars like yourself. Just look around at all the pictures on the wall. Oh, that reminds me. I'm sorry to tell you this, but due to the raise in food costs, we have to start charging you $2 more per Joe. You okay with that, darling?" This most recent cost hike didn't even seem to register in Carl's mind. He just absentmindedly said, "Uh-huh," as he looked around the photos of heavily obese people all the way to the ceiling in some places. He looked at his picture hanging on the wall in his booth. It showed him sitting there with 2 sloppy Joes on the table, his double chin extending to the wide smile on his face. He glanced down at his table and realized it was pushed so far as it could go on the other side of the booth to allow him to slide in and out. There wasn't enough room for even a child to sit on the other side, and his gut already pressed against the edge of the table. Carl took the picture off the wall, pushed past Nancy, and headed towards the bathroom. He stood before the mirror and compared himself to the photo. The guy in the photo was much bigger than he used to be, before all the sloppy Joes, but his image in the mirror looked like someone who had eaten both of those guys. Carl pinched the rolls of his fat under his chin and jiggled them. He thought about how he used to be fat as lazy, insecure, and even stupid. He seemed strange to him since he started putting on weight. He never once saw himself that way. His gurgling stomach reminded him of the 4 Joes being prepared for him right in the kitchen. He suddenly felt sickeningly hungry. He came out of the bathroom and started to scrutinize the photos in the hallway. Nancy stepped up to him. "Oh, I wouldn't count on them if I was you, hun. Your order will be up soon. Why don't you go sit down? I topped off your sweet tea." She began to walk away as Carl spoke up. All the people in these photos are dead now, aren't they? Nancy sighed and turned to face Carl. Most of them, but don't you think about that, sweetheart. All our regulars are the happiest they'd ever been right to the end. The ding-ding-ding of the order up bell yanked Carl from depressing empathy. I bet that's your gel right now, darling. She gave his fat shoulder a reassuring squeeze and headed over to the next order window. He stood there at the entrance hall and looked out the diner. The place was crowded as usual, with familiar faces who'd watch over the months bulk up like himself. Foot-long chili dogs, fried chicken with pasta, double bacon cheeseburger, chicken and waffles, sloppy joes, and all sorts of other huge portions of artery-clogged foods they were devouring by the perfectly content customers. He wondered how many of them would succumb to heart failure within the year. Carl slid into his booth, sipping his sweet tea, and thought about how the overwhelming contentness he'd felt since he moved to the little pass-through town. He hung his picture back on the wall as the thought of the picture it would replace came to mind. He vaguely remembered Nancy telling him her name was Ginger, so she loved their chicken and waffles. He recalled how happy she looked with the bottle of syrup in one hand and a fork in the other. Nancy showed up with 2 trays and expertly transferred his 4 sloppy joes to the table. Let me get you some extra napkins. Carl looked down at the 4 huge sloppy joes before him and uttered, Happy right to the end, huh? Nancy beamed a wide, toothy grin at him over her shoulders. That's right, sugar. Carl patted the side of his belly and expertly grabbed Sloppy Joe with both hands. Well then, tell the cook to get one more ready for me. I want to try for 5 today.